call for sex.
I don't know, baby. I never looked.
Austin.
Very few games affect me the way Monolith Productions' 2005 masterpiece, F.E.A.R, does. Altogether, this is a resounding seminar in level design, AI programming, audio engineering, and use of light and shadow in what I lovingly describe as an interactive mural that stands shoulder to shoulder with the greatest of the genre. In the meantime, Paxton Fettel gets his Red Wings.
I am the Clit Commander!
First, some context. If you don't want the story spoiled for you, skip ahead to this time code and we can resume. Armacam Technology Corporation, renowned publicly for its achievements in medicine and aerospace manufacturing, has a dark underbelly as a private military company and had been secretly developing a backstage army of cloned soldiers, referred to as replicas, under the order of Psychic Commander and primary antagonist Paxton Fettel. In the introduction of the game, Fettel gains control of the replica army and overtakes Armacam by force, terminating several people in the process. Our main character, only ever referred to as the Point Man, is a rookie operative in an elite, secretive military unit by the name of First Encounter Assault Recon, or F.E.A.R.
He said it! He said it!
F.E.A.R has been called upon to find and fix Paxton Fettel. Upon his death, his telepathic link to the replicas will be severed, and the clone army will be disabled automatically.
She's afraid
As the game progresses, the Point Man continues to experience hallucinations in which he hears Fettel speaking to him or sees various iterations of a little girl in a red dress.
He deserved to die.
The little girl's name is Alma, a child gifted with extraordinary psychic abilities. As a very small girl, approximately ages 3 through 5, Alma was analyzed and tested constantly in an attempt to harness her abilities.
What's the first thing
When this failed, Armacam Technology Corporation, in an abhorrent experiment known as Project Origin, decided to use the girl as a vessel to birth another generation of psychics, and shortly before her 8th birthday, Alma was put into an induced coma. With DNA extracted from Alma, as well as with contributions from the research team, Alma was impregnated with the future prototypes, one of which we find out was Paxton Fettel. The other, a year before him, was you, the Point Man. When Fettel was 10 years old, Alma integrated her consciousness with the boy, causing what is referred to as the first synchronicity event.
Not you.
During the event, Paxton Fettel became inexplicably psychotic and killed a few people before being sedated. The plug was pulled on Project Origin, and Alma was removed from life support. 20 years later, despite being presumed long dead, Alma links with Fettel once more, gaining control over him and, by proxy, his company of heavily armed, highly trained replica soldiers. As it turns out, Alma was subjected to the experiments, including the artificial insemination during Project Origin, under the orders of her own father, Harlan Wade. Turns out, some of his DNA was spliced into the project too.
Who wants cream? Nobody? Okay, no cream.
Harlan, guilt-stricken, unleashes Alma from her secure vault, and she basically unleashes the apocalypse.
Good job, douchebag.
In summary, Alma Wade is a pissed-off ghost and is using her psychic link to her second son and his army of clones to destroy everyone involved. Her firstborn psychic son is an operative in an anti-paranormal military group, and in the end, she climbs into a helicopter after setting off a nuclear explosion. What's so hard about that to comprehend? But don't let the story get in the way of the strongest aspect of fear. If someone who didn't play video games asked you what the difference between one shooter and another was, how would you begin to delineate between some of your favorites? When I think of fear, the single word that comes to my mind is aggression. Due to the brilliant, tight level design, a bellicose, spectacular enemy AI, and weapons that have the impact of a bomb, F.E.A.R is one of the few video games out of the tens of thousands of hours I've played that has ever legitimately caused my adrenaline to spike. I love all types of games, and not every first-person game needs to be complete chaos in order to be notable. As a matter of fact, one of my all-time favorite video games, period, is What Remains of Edith Finch, which is about the furthest thing from F.E.A.R as we can get. But every now and then, I need something that's gonna make my Jimmy tingle.
Glock, Glock! You know what I'm saying?
The guns of F.E.A.R are actually pretty basic, but this is the way I like it. One thing I didn't like about F.E.A.R 2 was the modeling for most of the weapons. There are colorful little bicycle reflectors on each firearm, and it's kind of ugly.
You don't have to kill everybody.
Yeah, bitch!
In F.E.A.R, it feels as if you are simply holding a cold hunk of metal and polymer. No frills, no cute baubles or canted iron sights, IR lasers or optic risers. There's something so pure about using weapons in a game like F.E.A.R. I don't feel like I have any hardware advantages against my opponents. I have to use a combination of speed, aggression, controlled bursts of fire, and the right tool for the job, depending on the circumstance. Right from the get-go, the point man is equipped with probably my favorite gaming pistol ever, the AT-14, a .40 caliber semi-automatic that appears to have been modeled after a Heckler & Koch USP. The sound this thing makes. Combine that with the perfect cycling animation, and this is probably the closest a game felt to firing a real handgun. Much like Remedy Entertainment's masterpiece, Max Payne, Monolith wanted to make F.E.A.R feel like you were in control of a Hong Kong action movie. And thus, the point man gets to dual wield these things as well, just like Inspector Tequila. Next is the RPL, a 9mm submachine gun based heavily on the H&K MP5K. K is for Kurz, which in German means short.
It's a fact.
God, I love using this weapon. With a high-capacity magazine, a relatively low recoil, and a high rate of fire, this thing is a buzzsaw. The sparks from metal, dust from drywall, and blood spray from enemies when you do battle makes this a favorite of mine. It does comparatively low damage when put up against the G2A2, but your mobility is better with the RPL, and not many things stand up to a barrage of Parabellum at point blank. Speaking of, the heavy assault rifle in F.E.A.R, the G2A2, is yet another Heckler & Koch inspired shooter. Though often mistaken for being modeled on the G36, this weapon is actually modeled more on the SL8, the civilian version of the G36. This is a loud, destructive rifle. It's a little bulky for my liking, as I like being swift, but it packs a wallop and never disappoints. Then we have the ASP rifle, based on the TAR-21 Bullpup. This thing, as the kids say, slaps. The limited ammo supply in the game makes this weapon feel special when you get to equip it. The 3-round burst and 3-power scope make it such a fun pop-up gun, meaning I don't necessarily run into battle head first, but rather hang back just a smidge and pick off replicas through the looking glass. It's also powerful, utilizing a 7.62 cartridge, and chews through most enemies, even the heavies, with relative ease. The explosive choices are great as well. These include the Mod 3 multi-rocket launcher, which sends 3 rocket-propelled grenades out and devastates whatever it hits. There's also the MP50 grenade launcher that always puts a big grin below my tash.
Excellent.
The Type 7 particle weapon is F.E.A.R's version of a railgun, and like any respectable gaming railgun, it's devastating, powerful, and satisfying to use. F.E.A.R takes things up a notch though. When you hit someone with a beam of energy from the Type 7, the enemy's soft tissue will melt off their bones and leave a skeleton behind. Gruesome, but dope. Another fictional weapon is the HV 10mm penetrator. Think of this like the gun that Blade uses to launch silver spikes at vampires with. If you don't get that reference, go watch Blade and Blade 2. If you've come back and you didn't like those movies, leave this channel and never return.
Get the fuck out of here! Hold on.
Anyway, the penetrator, as its name would imply, penetrates. The thunk of metal hitting armor and flesh, followed by the gruesome shriek of a replica as they're stuck to the wall behind them, makes this one a winner. Grenades in F.E.A.R give me the ability to move the front of my basketball shorts through the power of my root alone. The point man can use standard fragmentation grenades, which detonate upon impact and leave a devastating shockwave.
Shit, this thing catches up to me.
The only thing I enjoy more than the standard grenades are the remote bombs. There are proximity mines in F.E.A.R which are great for laying dynamic traps, but remote bombs are the ultimate. Peeking a corner, throwing one of these blueberries out, and clacking it off in the middle of a cluster of replicas rules. I saved the best for last.
Fucking thing sucks!
The VK-12 pump-action shotgun. This is the one, baby. The ultimate. This is the Chad of video game shotguns. This gun should be snorkeling in a pool of gash. Every video game shotgun is second place to this, except maybe the side-by-side in Dusk. It's the entire presentation, the teeth-rattling sound effects, the way each pellet of shot kicks up something in the environment, the discarded shot shell hitting the floor. It's all so satisfying. Not to mention, the Spaz 12 just looks badass in games. It's sleek, scary, and mean-looking. Guns in real life are a dangerous and devastating multi-purpose tool, and should always be treated with the utmost respect and care.
You're going to push with your right and pull with your left. Focus on that front sight tip. Now, if you want on this 44 Magnum, you can shoot it single action. A nice light trigger pull.
Did you mean to do that?
Yeah.
But in video games, it's crucial that you feel like the reins are off and you can really let loose with mayhem to your heart's content. And this is part of why the basic gameplay loop in F.E.A.R is so amazing. The other part is the fabled AI.
Excellent.
The artificial intelligence of F.E.A.R has built up somewhat of a mythic status. The truth is, as is the case with all video games, is that it's a very clever use of smoke and mirrors. A sublime combination of close quarters level design, stellar animation, superior audio engineering, and a very special technique known as Goal-Oriented Action Planning, or GOAP. GOAP is a system for artificial intelligence that permits the operative, in this case the replica army, to autonomously perform a set of actions as part of a plan towards the completion of a goal. What this means in the context of the moment-to-moment action of F.E.A.R is that the replica troops can choose, based on the situation in front of them, the most efficient method to complete their goal, which is to kill you. It's a very fascinating subject that some bright minds have elaborated on in depth over various articles and videos. If you're not into the whys and what fors, just understand this. It all adds up to make fighting the enemies in F.E.A.R a triumph. It's exceptionally fun. Replicas will knock over objects to make impromptu cover, jump through windows, they'll flank you from multiple angles or use grenades to smoke you out, or, conversely, if they feel like they're losing, will fall back and reassess their course of action. They'll even make accurate callouts depending on where the point man is at that time, such as in a cubicle or behind a couch. Following F.E.A.R, several games took advantage of the tech, such as Condemned Criminal Origins, Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl, Fallout 3, and Deus Ex Human Revolution. Oh, how I love you, Human Revolution. One last point about the AI, and this is important because it completes the entire presentation, is Mark Lund's vocal performance for the replica troops. All of the AI programming is great, but it wouldn't have the same impact if the voice work was weak.
Push it! Pull it!
Pop it.
Mr. Lund really gets into the role, and the choice of filters over his baseline vocals served to make the replica sound inhuman and mean, but simultaneously, when they're scared shitless of the point man, you really get the sense of being truly a brutal force of nature.
Get out of there! I can't! Where should I go?
It's why, despite the same AI program, the enemies in F.E.A.R 2 are comparatively bland. Not bad per se, but compared to this grisly force of killers, the enemies in Part 2 sound like mall security with gas masks.
Threat sighted. Target acquired. There he is. Over there.
Again, even if you have no interest in the stuff under the hood, which is actually deceptively simple if you look at the finite state machine that Monolith used, Just know that if you've never played F.E.A.R, the gameplay is marvelous. There's a reason many sing its praises nearly 20 years later. Oh yes, reflex time. Long story short, F.E.A.R had its own bullet time mechanic, and it makes the game even better. Turning an enemy into a pincushion with the HV penetrator in slow-mo is just mwah.
You don't have to kill everybody.
F.E.A.R runs on the Jupiter extended version of the beloved Lithtech engine, which was propelled by a then new DirectX 9 renderer. It includes the use of Havoc physics and effects like bump mapping and parallax mapping, which gives textures like bullet holes a real feeling of depth when you blow out chunks of concrete.
And what killed them?
I don't know.
The particle effects during gun battles are legendary. Sparks, dirt, dust, arterial blood, stacks of paper, and fire are never far from you. It becomes this super addicting loop. You hear the comms from replica soldiers, you spot their shadows, initiate battle, and watch the spectacle unfold before your eyes. The graphics were breathtaking back in 2005, but still hold up very well in the modern era. I'm not consumed with nostalgia either. As amazing as a game like God of War Ragnarok looks, and that game really is stunning, what keeps F.E.A.R so appealing to my eye is the downright artistic lighting. The shadows of F.E.A.R have a deep, dark tone that reminds me of the inky blackness of being at depth in the ocean. Very few games do shadows this well, except maybe the Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay. This is likely due to the use of similar techniques related to per-pixel stencil shadowing and dynamic lighting. It's as though the darkness swallows the point man every time he saunters through them. This works very well with how Monolith chose to play the scares, too. Thankfully, Monolith deliberately chose to go against a series of tedious jump scares from generic monsters, and instead opted to toy with the player's mind by subverting expectations. You'll see a dark corner or peer through a dirty window pane, expecting a loud noise and a creepy character. But no, you never know quite what to expect. The overtones of the game are obviously inspired heavily by Japanese horror films, such as Ringu, Ju-on, The Grudge, and Dark Water. To be honest, and it's not because I'm some kind of tough guy or whatever, but the whole creepy little kid thing just doesn't do it for me. The classic ladder scare got me the first time, but then I'll see Alma standing creepily off in the distance, and it's just like, alright Alma, on your way. However, I do love the atmosphere created by this more cerebral style of terror, and I prefer this style in horror films and in literature. And I will say that I got one good scare during this playthrough that I had forgotten about.
Jesus H. Fuck!
I've been reading the complaints about the repetitive, cream-colored walls of the Armacam offices since the first reviews were published. To this day, most video reviews online complain of the extended period of time you spend in these office environments, which is, by the way, totally valid, and I don't disagree with this criticism, and I am all for environmental variety. But I have a weird love for the Armacam office levels. Give me a second. I spent a lot of time around offices as a kid. No, really. One of my parents worked at the office of an apartment complex and the other for a newspaper. So being around fax machines, CRT monitors, filing cabinets, stacks of documents, corded telephones, and boring carpet patterns gives me this bizarre sense of familiarity. And then, being able to unleash hell on everything with the visceral, destructive feedback of the Lithtech engine is especially satisfying.
1, 2, 10.
The repetitive environments are a valid grumble to be had, And more variety definitely would have been nice. But I've always enjoyed the corridors of F.E.A.R.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
However, not every level is a series of cubicles. The opening is in an industrial harbor area, which is decent, and later in the game, on interval 8, you battle replicas in a dilapidated apartment complex that looks straight out of Condemned 2, another brilliant, criminally underrated Monolith franchise entry. Hey. Another area of repetition is in the enemy design. You essentially fight the same enemy variant throughout the entirety of F.E.A.R. As we discussed earlier, the enemy AI is exceptional and a blast to square off against, but you only really fight replicas, heavy replicas, assassin replicas, mechanized replicas, ATC agents, and occasionally you shoot at ghosts, which is lame. That's about it. Oh, and drones. I always detest pesky flying enemy variants in first-person shooters, and these are no exception. I love the little touch of science fiction in F.E.A.R, such as with the particle weapon, but this is just some straight-up George Lucas nonsense, and it sucks.
Yeah, but there's always this little part in you is saying, what am I doing?
So, fighting regular replica troops is excellent, but you will occasionally go toe-to-toe with heavy troopers. They're basically just regular replicas with extra HP, but there's a palpable sense of tension when these boys hit the field. They usually carry the penetrator and take extra damage, and with their unique white shoulder-padded armor and glowing blue eyes, they just look badass, honestly. Replica assassins are okay. I think you kill a total of 10 throughout the entire game, but they go invisible.
Whoa!
So, a cool concept, but kind of uneventful.
Vote for Donnelly!
You do fight normal human enemies at a few points, but they're basically just mall cops with replica AI, so, Overall, the graphics in F.E.A.R are some of my favorite in any FPS ever.
It was me! I ate sheep shit!
The soundtrack in F.E.A.R is ultimately subdued. There are a few bombastic pieces that sound nice, but overall the score, composed by Nathan Grigg, is predominantly composed of an eerie mix of a few dark, spooky notes, alongside some industrial noises and a soft, creepy chorus. It's largely forgettable, but I don't mean that as a criticism, quite the opposite. The score complements the situation that the player is in, be it slipping through black shadows or spraying bullets everywhere. It enhances the game without overshadowing the action. I love that the audio engineers used cheap equipment to record field samples, like dragging objects across metal to produce the off-putting sounds. F.E.A.R's soundscape blends well, and it helps to maintain the tone. As much as I love the soundtrack to games like Doom 2016 or Maximum Action, metal or thumping techno would have undercut the horror themes of F.E.A.R completely. Job well done. The voice acting is serviceable, but other than Mark Lund's phenomenal performance as the replicas, nothing really stands out. To be honest, I can't stand Paxton Fettle's character and his extra evil voice. It's that corny Christoph Waltz scene-chewing. I do love Commissioner Rodney Betters and his Midwestern accent.
You've seen his training results. His reflexes are totally off the charts. I think he can handle himself.
The star of the show is, of course, the weapon sound effects. Every burst of machine gun fire, every compressed air blast pumping out a penetrator spike, the thunderous wail of the VK-12, and the sound of explosions and replica screams as you come out of reflex time. Every effect is perfectly produced and mixed. It's very easy in the modern era of gaming to feel disillusioned with this hobby that so many of us love. It feels like so many games have become incomplete vessels, used to sell you more junk that you used to just unlock from playing the game itself. Call of Duty, Battlefield, and whatever EA or Ubisoft are releasing this fall. I'm not a pure nostalgia freak or a contrarian for the sake of it. And there are some wonderful things about modern games, things that pessimists may choose to ignore when they want to maintain their rage. And not everything from this era has aged well. F.E.A.R stands shoulder to shoulder with the giants of the FPS genre. It's a culmination of talented, smart, and hardworking people that came together to give you their best. It's from a time when many developers were seeking to best their colleagues, as well as their previous efforts. It's obvious when you play this game that the people responsible for it wanted you to enjoy it completely, that they wanted not only a satisfied customer, but a new fan of the studio going forward. It adds weight to that Monolith logo on the box.
On the box. It should always be on the box.
Although Monolith Studios had released many amazing games prior, like Blood and No One Lives Forever, as well as having more recent hits like Shadow of Mordor, F.E.A.R is a towering achievement. Not for the faint of heart.